essentially a decentralized S3 storage. So if you look at AWS, Azure, um, Google Cloud, they have S3. They have AWS S3. There is Azure. I think they call it something else, but basically it's an S3 storage, which is used for websites, which is used for applications, and basically it's used worldwide for all apps, whether it's a consumer app or enterprise app. So this is a big deal for us. This is a big it's a big app for us, because if this gets used by all the consumer and business apps, and if one makes it successful, think of Dropbox, think of Snapshot. If it makes successful, then it can be a huge deal for Zeus. So here, just to go ahead, I mean, basically we sign in through Firebase OTP, just like any other app. And then, we have, we basically have allocations, and then we get tokens from the wallet. Now, obviously, we're getting the tokens from the faucet here, but in general, we will get the tokens from DEX, from DeFi. And we haven't shown the DeFi aspect of it, but basically we can get that from DeFi. As you can see, there are different use cases for Blimp. Obviously, the number one use case is to back up your data to decentralized storage. Even if you're computing in cloud, let's say I'm computing on AWS, but I want to store the data on decentralized cloud because we want to have better performance, lower read cost, because read cost is very high on AWS. So that's one of the reasons why you want to do. So here, as you can see with OTP, you log into Blimp, it gets the wallet information. So you select the wallet, and then you verify wallet. You get into the allocations. So you can see the different allocations. There are you can create an allocation. So in this case, you're basically creating an allocation here with different data and parity shards. So it's very flexible. You can choose how many tokens to lock, and you can, as you can see, you can have different blobbers come up based on your preference. You can prefer certain blobbers if you want. So once you do that, you can okay, so you can use Blimp. So I'm gonna pause it a bit before I explain what's going on. So basically you can use Blimp for three things, which is basically this direct storage, which means it's the most flexible storage. You can choose an allocation with a certain data, certain parity, so it gives you total control over how much uptime you want. So let's say I want the best uptime possible, better than AWS, better than anything in the world. Then you can choose the servers you want, where they're located. You can choose your preferred servers, or you can say, okay, I want certain servers of this right price or geo distribution. And then I want certain data and certain parity. So if I want very high uptime, I want more parity. So let's say I choose 3 servers, 3 data shards, and then let's say 4 or 6 parity shards, which means I have total of 9 servers, and all I need is only 3 servers to be available, which gives you a very high uptime at all times. And then I can do different types of storage. So one is direct storage, meaning I'm writing files directly using the using either the SDK or basically the UI to upload files. And then these are the two use cases, the S3 server and cloud migration. So S3 server is the primary use case for this app, in which case you don't have to change any code. You just set up the S3 server and just use it as you as if you're using a AWS server or a Azure server. So you just use that mode if you want to have no code change. Direct storage is where you need to either use our UI or you use SDK to upload data to the allocation. And then cloud migration is about migrating your existing storage from AWS. Today, right now on this app today, we only have AWS, but we will support other cloud down the road. But initially, we just have cloud migration from AWS S3 to decentralized to Zeus decentralized storage. And this is important because a lot of customers came up to us and asked, how do we migrate from AWS to decentralized storage? We like your product, but we want to do S3 server, but we also want to migrate our old data. So we have provided a workflow and through this app that makes it very simple. And I'll go through it. Okay, so right now we're looking at direct storage where we just, basically this is the files that we have on direct storage we can upload and so forth. Now we're looking at, actually we are still looking at direct storage, I believe, and we're uploading the file on direct storage from the UI, and so we can upload file, and we can create a folder. This is similar to Vault. The only difference here is that you can, as you can see, it's uploading the video. So this is very similar to Vault. The only difference is that the allocation is something that you create, and you have control over what type of allocation you want, whereas a Vault is predetermined and is for consumer use case. As you can see from the wallet, the details, you can see your private key. We also have privacy report, GDPR. That's also a feature that's actually going to be coming up. We haven't incorporated it yet, but that's something we have for Blimp. And let's see, I think we will now do the S3 server, I believe. Okay, we can update allocation. We increase the storage size and so forth. And once we go through this update allocation, the DEX tool will come up, which is, it goes through decentralized exchange and converts your Ethereum token into ZCN token. You can also cancel an allocation and you can get refunded. So that's also something we have incorporated. So you can, as you can see, you can refund and everything. So, all right. So I think we're okay. So we're showing the images. As you can see, you can view the images on Blimp. This is something that you cannot do on AWS S3. So we added some qualities of Dropbox into AWS S3 storage. So and it was fairly easy for us to do because that's something we already do with Vault. So it's basically taking some of the Vault features and putting it onto decentralized storage. And it looks like, this is a recording that was done earlier of my AMA, and it's a video you can play back, and the playback is in a stream mode. All right, so now I think we're let me, I think, fast forward it a little bit because I believe we are a little bit out of, oops, let me see if I can get control over this. Okay, so this is just okay, so here Okay, so I think we're wallet. Let's see. All right. Okay, so yeah, I mean, basically, you cannot download the wallet. You cannot see the wallet because we hide it, and you can only download it to your server, to your computer, and then I. Okay, now I think we're gonna talk about S3 storage now. Let's see. Yeah, so we're setting up S3, as you can see. It's setting up S3, so we choose S3, and now we go through the workflow of setting up the S3. So one of the workflow is that the key part of the workflow is that we want you to have control over the keys. So we pre-fill some of the aspects like allocation and so forth, and then we generate a script. And this is the script that you need to copy and run it on your terminal. And this is the terminal of the server that you set up on AWS. So you SSH into it. As you can see, you're SSHing into it. And then you run the script. So basically, we prepared the script based on what the information you gave us. And this is and basically the IP address and things like that. And so as you can see, the script pulls in the repository and runs it on the server to set up the S3. Now you say, okay, I have ran the script, and then what happens is that it looks at, so it basically looks at the server, pulls in the data from the server, and populates it. And you can see this working here at the bottom right, and you can see it's populated. Now you can see the gateway port number, you can see the log search API. So this is, and you can see that there are type of requests now that you can do, like list buckets or put object. So yeah, so for instance, if you want to put object where basically you are and you put it in a bucket. So now you're executing an S3 command. So now what I'm doing here, this is, by the way, a demonstration of how it works from the UI. Obviously, an enterprise will do this with the code where they will write to S3 server. So these put object will be essentially a code that they already have and they're writing to this bucket. But we're showing how it's done to the UI so you can test it for yourself, right? And this is what all the IT folks will do. Basically, they will test it out and see if it works. So you can see that I can now create bucket. I can put an object in the bucket and be able to make these curl requests. So you can see when you do a curl, it basically goes to the server, goes to your server, and basically executes that action, which is uploading that file, and then it gets automatically uploaded to the decentralized storage allocation, which is pretty cool. So here you are essentially doing an S3, executing an S3 command, and you can see from the logs that these are the S3 logs. As you can see, these are the S3 logs of putting object. All these objects have been put, and you can view the details and see that, okay, I have I have put this object there. If there's an error, then it will show if there's an error and so forth, right? Okay, so now we're going to talk about the migration. So you can see I can do AWS migration. Today only AWS migration is available. And we have the API keys where you're going to basically migrate the data from. So I have an S3 server, S3 bucket on AWS, and I'm migrating it. So this is the script. You generate the script. You basically run it on the terminal. Again, we do this way because we don't want access to your key, and so that's why we want this to we want you to run the script. That way, we don't have access to the keys, but we make the process very simple. And so it says, okay, I have ran the script, and as you can see, it's kind of waiting. On the right bottom side, you will see this loading indicator, and you can see that, okay, now I can pull in the data that now I'm migrating the data. You see this, now it's migrated, 100% migrated, and you can visualize all of that. And you can run migration again if you have uploaded new files, so it will automatically sort that out. And then you can see these files on the home page. So if you were to select any of these allocations like S3, Cloud, or whatever, you can see on the home page, where the files are. So if you were to click on the home page, you can see. Well, in this case, I think you can upload file as well. Yeah, so you can upload file, but you can see some of the other files that are appearing. They're basically that was there before. Okay, and you can view the files and so forth. So, so the main and you can download file as well. So it's basically think of Vault is basically think of Dropbox and S3 storage, Minio S3 storage. We kind of put it together and made it into a nice user interface where you can set up a server without us having any access keys. It's a workflow that makes it very simple for you to set up a S3 server, a cloud migration server, and even a direct storage server, or a direct storage allocation, and be able to send data using S3 commands, and be able to view them on the dashboard, as well as be able to pull in the data and upload directly from the dashboard. So it's a very nice feature we have on Blimp. The main application is, as I said, as an S3 server, so that you don't have to. It's basically a no-code change for any of the Web 2 companies to migrate or to use decentralized storage or become Web 3. So let me kind of go through the conclusion of this Blimp. Who will use Blimp and why it's so powerful? It's basically for all enterprises. Now, if you look at all Web3 company, it's kind of difficult to transition from Web2 to Web3 because you gotta do smart contracts, you gotta write a lot of code, you gotta deal with Ethereum or Polygon or what have you. But in our case, the transition from Web 2 to Web 3 is seamless. You don't have to do any coding to first participate on the network. Second, to send any data to be part of decentralized storage. So that's very powerful. I think we have two very powerful tools. Chimney is a very powerful tool for anyone to provide storage and have a multi-cloud strategy or a hybrid cloud strategy. If you look at in the old days, well, it's still been talked about, but hybrid cloud and multi-cloud has been talked about for almost a decade or more, 2 decades, right? Why do people want hybrid cloud or multi-cloud? Because of uptime. They want control over their uptime. They want control over their data to make sure that if AWS goes down or any server goes down, they still have data in their local servers. That's one. The other is performance. AWS is not as performant, especially at the edges, because their data centers are far out. They're not within metro cities. So those are the two reasons why hybrid cloud exists, which is a combination of private and traditional cloud, public cloud, and multi-cloud exists because of uptime and resilience and disaster recovery. So Blimp makes it basically the multi-cloud hybrid cloud strategy come alive. And it's kind of a dream for IT managers because you don't need a big IT team to now have a multi-cloud strategy or a hybrid cloud strategy. Otherwise, it's a nightmare to handle it and manage it. So now with the Blimp tool, it becomes very easy for enterprises to migrate and not worry about how they do the migration. It's all about in the setup, how they set up the allocation. Do they want certain servers in a particular geo? Do they want no censorship jurisdictions where they can populate the servers? So these are the choices they can make, and they can also decide on how many servers they want. And how many parity servers do they want? Do they want high reliability, or do they want distribution like CDN, which is, today if you look at AWS and other companies, they use either CloudFront or they use Cloudflare. These are two big CDN, and of course they use underneath the hood, they use Akamai and so forth. So the choices are: do I want to do that, or should I use decentralized storage? We can still do the compute in the cloud, but then get the data out of the cloud and put it in decentralized storage, where you have a high resilience, 100% uptime. You can now achieve 100% uptime. You have zero loss of business continuity, which means zero loss of business revenue, because if your website, especially for e-commerce, if your website goes down, you're basically losing money. And this has happened, there have been crashes during Christmas shopping, and when you have these spikes that come up, they're hard to pull the images or pull data from. And especially nowadays, if you look at e-commerce and so forth, they're very high resolution images. There's also videos, so it's hard to pull data and serve it if you don't have this sort of resilient infrastructure. So by making things more available is something that businesses would like. So that's one of the most important things that we have done for having Blimp be a conduit for people to now achieve 100% uptime with decentralized storage. And this is without any code change, so they can do it today. Right after mainnet release, they can do it. Secondly, with Chimney is now enterprises can actually have their own servers use Chimney to have a multi-cloud strategy, because they don't need to have their own private cloud. They don't need to have a separate IT team manage their private cloud, because they can just use Chimney and do it. So I think these are and our BD target is business development target is MSPs and enterprises, and basically educating them about how they can use Chimney and Blimp for a multi-cloud strategy. So I think it's very powerful, these two software tools, and I hope big things can happen. Obviously, the process of selling to enterprises and MSPs is that first you crawl, with Blimp and Chimney, because there's no code involved. And then you start to walk with SDK, which we have tools, and we will have, multiple hackathons showing how you can use SDK on your website or on your app, transform those apps into decentralized storage. And then you start to run, then you can incorporate Bolt and Vault within your corporate structure, because Bolt is something that you can use to incentivize people by giving them tokens. Vault is something that all enterprises should do. They should allow their employees to have their own personal space, personal cloud. So we're very excited about these apps, and hoping to release them next week, or even this week, depending on if it's ready. And they will be released on the demo network, demo.zeus.network. And so look at the announcement. There should be announcements coming soon, probably, as I said, as early as end of this week or next week, when we start releasing these apps for community to play around with, and hopefully we'll get some feedback from the community. Most of the, obviously, will, get feedback on the features, but hopefully all the bugs are taken care of, because we have already tested these web apps completely, and then we will also release iOS and Android versions of this apps for Bolt and for Vault. For all the other apps, it'll be basically web app. All right, so let me. I think I'm done with my the Blimp session. Now, what I want to do is, if there is any other questions, I'll answer them. Looks like there are some. Um, looks like there's some questions from Mr. Yabbles. Glad to see you can geo-restrict where you store data. That's really important in Europe. Having enough capacity in specific regions is important for adoption. Absolutely. I mean, we are basically one of the reasons we are doing Blimp and having such a customized way you can set up your storage is for that specific purpose, where you can have data localization. You can have control over your data, where your data is stored. There's also a Schrems 2 ruling in Europe, as you know, and then for GDPR as well. So we are very cognizant of that market space, and we are a good fit for that market.